Okay, reminder of our objectives and being an open community where everybody's welcome, and protecting data and use. Our antitrust policy. In terms of the agenda, I moved things around because I think the vendor related content and the website are longer topics. So the quick ones I tried to get out of the way first. Stephen, do you have a draft? Did you send out a draft of the blog that you wanted to do yet?
My apologies. I may not have actually shared that more widely. I thought I did last week.
You did, yeah. I think you sent it to probably both tech and outreach, if I recall.
Yeah,
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of just put that on the agenda and see if anybody wanted to discuss it. Maybe we can pull it up, depending on how much time we have. Do you want to do that today?
Sure, happy to.
Okay, why don't we move that in front of the vendor related content and website, and try to cover it off pretty quickly. I don't think that's a very controversial topic. Otherwise we probably won't get to it. So roll call, acceptance of minutes, action items, kind of standard items, and then I was going to give a quick recap of the Gartner analyst meeting, and Dave's on, so he can also share his thoughts. We had an introductory call with that open source enclave workshop event, so we can just provide an update on that. That's super quick. And then we were going to do the vendor related content guidelines, of which Stephen sent out kind of a straw man on GitHub, so we can discuss that further. And then we're continuing the discussion of the website changes, which Ben is leading, but I'll take notes since he's only on phone today. And then we'll move Stephen's mission blog up to right after the open source enclave workshop event, if that works for everybody. Is there anything else that I missed that we wanted to cover on the agenda?
Oh, Seth, this is Ben. I had one quick question, or one thing I'd like to bring up is I wanted to just ask if it's acceptable to, or have a quick talk about bringing, having a CCC booth at the Red Hat Summit. I've been asked to do that from the Red Hat side. So if we could just put that as a topic for a few minutes.
Sure. CCC booth at Red Hat.
No, at the virtual summit.
Okay. Let's do roll call. I see. So there's Ben on the phone. Who's the 512 number?
Hey, this is Chelsea Vincent. I'm with ARM. Mostly just wanted to hear the recap of the Gartner briefing, and yeah, probably won't be able to stay on very long.
Are you the ARM's AR person or PR person?
Yeah, AR and PR. Yep, that's right.
Okay, welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, and then we have Jesse, and Dave is here, and Philippe. So we have, I believe we have quorum for approval of minutes. Is there anybody else on the call who I didn't mention? Stephen, obviously. Okay.
I am Ava today.
And yeah, Stephen's the voting member for Microsoft. So, okay, approval of minutes. There was one, I didn't flag it, but there was one action item that was kind of uncompleted. So
I updated that just this morning. I saw that. It was 2 words I left off.
Can you share what that action item was, just for the people before we? Yeah,
that action item was for me to have a meeting with Ben and go over website changes, and website changes were the 2 words that were missing.
Okay. I left that off the later action item review, but
sure.
we're going to talk about website changes, so that's fine. Did anybody else have any other amendments or questions about the minutes? They looked fine to me. Okay, so are there any objections or abstentions to approving the minutes? No. Okay, let's move to approve the minutes then. Action items. I think we're still working on the project intake. Anne, is there anything that needs to, do you remember what the next step is there?
Yeah, so there's I submitted a pull request on the governance repo. I think, Dave, it looks like you have it on your agenda tomorrow to discuss on the TAC call. So I can dial in for that. That's really it.
Okay. The budget one's just kind of an ongoing one. I don't think there's any updates on that. Ben, you're still looking into the CRM options, right? That's not no progress
Correct.
yet. Okay. And then Stefano, upload user engagement subcommittee documentation. Is this?
I'll bug Steven this week, and we'll make sure that gets up there.
Okay. Then Ben, this is what we're talking about today, correct? Oh no, this is different. Create a web summary template to recommend for new projects. Okay. So this is kind of the structure for the projects pages. Is that what we're talking about?
So are we talking about the website stuff now?
No, oh, sorry, you can't see the screen. Create a web summary template to record for new projects joining the CCC.
Yes, so I haven't done that. I'm behind there. So I need to create a template, and then I'm going to send that out to, well, I'll take it for Anarchs, and I'll send it to the other teams as well, and to have them fill it out and get their input on, and if the template should be adjusted or customized for that individual project. All the pages right now, we're keeping it really simple and easy, so Stefano can basically do it. So we're not doing anything pretty. We're just kind of getting, images and content paragraphs up there. That's pretty much about it.
Okay. So I'm just adding just for visibility here. There's the website changes, which we're going to discuss today, and then there's the vendor related content. Or I guess we should probably call it the news posting, right? That's more specific. The vendor related content's more of a broader discussion.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Let's do the analyst debrief. So I think we had 5 or 6 analysts who said they were attending, but only 3 showed. It was Brian Lowens, Tony Harvey, and Ramon Cricken. Ramon joined late, but he also stayed on late, about 10 minutes over the half hour. These are some of the questions that I captured in notes.
I thought that they were more talkative than either of the other 2 meetings combined.
Yes, yeah, they asked lots of good questions. They were very engaged. I had not briefed Ramon before, so I wasn't, I had briefed Brian quite a bit, and I hadn't briefed Tony. So Brian was the only one that I knew individually. I think the first question was kind of, they were just clarifying the structure of the CCC and, what kinds of licensing terms and things there are. That was kind of a, basic question. I think Ramon, asked the obvious, what's the definition of a TEE after you gave the definition of CCC or of confidential computing. And I took a follow-up to send him the section from the scoping document that you have on that, or at least the IETF one.
Well, I think for anybody who wasn't on the call, I kind of answered that on the slide that we had about the 7 different criteria, of which 3 of them are part of the definition of TEE. So I actually had the answer on about 2 slides later. So hopefully he's got the answer in his head, but we can certainly point him
Yeah,
at the written versions. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely want him to have a written version
Mhm.
in case he wants to cite it
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
in reports. So is there the one in the scoping document? Is that the correct one?
I need to update the scoping document because the scoping document quotes the IETF definition.
Mhm.
And then the tech provided feedback on the IETF definition. So the IETF then changed the definition to respond to the CCC's feedback. And so now the quote in the scoping document is out of date. And so now I need to update it with the newest quote.
Okay, so let me know when that's done, and then I'll send the follow-up after that. So that's in there.
Okay, sounds great.
And by the way, congratulations on that, Dave. You know, the idea that you were able to get the IETF better aligned with the definition that we're promulgating is a good thing.
It wasn't hard, yeah.
Brian asked about post-quantum encryption as part of TEEs or confidential computing. I think Mike did a good job of answering that, which is it's not defined, but it's possible depending on the implementation. I think was basically the
Basically,
answer.
he said that it was in scope for discussion in the CCC and projects may address it. The current hardware that's in the market doesn't currently address it. That was basically his answer.
Yeah, and which seemed to satisfy them.
Yep.
Ramon asked a question of kind of who the audience for the CCC was. And, you know, there were some nuances to that question that he clarified later, but I think what it came down to was that, you know, is this a kind of very technical kind of standards body, or is it more promotional of, or not promotional, but educational and going to be providing information actual end users could use? So it was kind of the more detailed version of that question.
Yeah, I think part of Ramon's comments was following up on the definition of TEE question, because I think what he's looking for is something that is written in layman speak that kind of defines confidential computing and kind of defines what a TEE is and so on. And so that's where we said white paper coming. And so he's eagerly looking forward to the white paper. So
yeah, and one of the things I suggested it was to have one or more of the analysts do a document review, which is like a formal process Gartner has. You send them a draft of the white paper, and then they give you written feedback, and then you can talk with them for 30 minutes about it. That's a good way, you know, even if we didn't care what they suggested, which I think we do, it's a good way to get them to read your paper and consider it and get more face time with them. So I suggest we incorporate that into the review process, Anne, for the white paper.
Yeah, does that fall under an inquiry seat, or I haven't?
Yeah, I think I would have to do it under my seat, or somebody would have to do it under their seat. So I can do it and then submit it, and you know, I'm not sure. I think technically you're supposed to have a seat to have the inquiry to get the feedback.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah,
you know.
we'll put it on the. Let's keep it on the timeline, and then as we get closer to having a final copy, we'll sort it out.
Yeah. I can always set it up, and then, you know, we can see what they'll allow. I mean, it would be optimal if you could be on that call, but they do have rules about it, so we'll see what we can do. Okay. Ramon hadn't gone through the slide deck. I reminded them they got it like a week before the inquiry. So I'm going to resend them the deck, the full deck. They also asked the AWS question, which Stephen gave his well-rehearsed answer to, that he pings them frequently and they've expressed interest in joining, and we'll let them know if they end up joining. And then we already talked about the document review. So I think it went well overall. There was good engagement, a lot of questions. We ran out of time before Tony and Brian went. Morgan had some audio issues. It was really hard to hear what he was saying. So that was a little disappointing, but I think overall it went well. Any questions on the briefing? This is the last scheduled briefing. We tried. We submitted the same briefing request to IDC, but they have not responded. So I think this is likely the last one for a little while, unless we get an inbound request from analysts. Chelsea, if you have anybody that you would, we kind of opened this up to the group before, but if there are any analysts you think we should brief beyond the ones we already have, let us know.
Yeah, would you mind sending, or would someone mind sending me? I just want to make sure I know who's been briefed so far. I think that would be useful, and I'm happy to take a look, and if there's anyone else that comes to mind,
so
I can let you know.
it's these three: Brian Loans, Tony Harvey,
Okay.
Ramon Cricken from Gartner, Steve Riley from Gartner, who's probably the most important one because he writes the definition of confidential computing. And then there was one other one, and then we did Heidi Shea from Forrester. So
Okay.
I can give you the, I'll look up, it's in our notes who was on the first one. But
okay, I think actually Philippe might have.
Yeah, I think I sent
Yeah,
it to
I think
you.
I might have that.
Yeah,
I'll take a look at that again.
Okay.
But yeah, no, this was a helpful debrief. I appreciate you going over that. I don't think I could probably stay throughout the rest of the meeting, so I'll drop now. But should you need anything else on the briefing side from ARM, definitely keep in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, the next topic, I just wanted, Stephen and I had the introductory meeting with the group that puts on the open source enclave workshop. I guess the summary is they're interested in the CCC kind of, I don't know, partnering or, co-running the event as more of a broader confidential computing event that would be built out. It normally occurs in July, but because of coronavirus, they haven't booked anything or don't have any plans to do it in July this year. So it's kind of up in the air. There was some discussion of whether they should, do it as a virtual event or, reschedule it for a later date once coronavirus is, is done or under control. Stephen, anything you wanted to add to about the discussion? And then we basically, I suggested that they come on and share in more detail with the outreach committee next week. So because I imagine people will have questions and want to look at it before we consider any proposal to do anything substantive with them.
Yeah, just to kind of give folks the sense of it, Dawn reached out. I mean, Dawn showed up for the San Francisco face-to-face because she's just down in Berkeley. She's the founder of Oasis Labs. Oasis Labs is a general member. And, she started the conversation by email of just, would this be something that we, the consortium, are interested in doing with them? And if you follow that link to last year's workshop, I mean, it was a well-run workshop by what it looks like. And certainly a number of our members were speakers and presenters over the last couple of years. So it feels like there's a there for, that this is something that we should, at the very least, consider sponsoring. But if we could more closely align the brands, it feels like an interesting first event for us. And at that point, the discussion kind of breaks down. It's like they don't really have a proposal for how that would work. It's not like they've come in with a clean, yes, they'd like some number of us to be on a program committee, or they're looking for sponsorship dollars for a venue or to organize. Like, they haven't got an ask for us yet. And so, you know, it's Seth and I are just keeping the discussion warm. But if you go take a look at the nature of the event, it was a highly technical event. I think our TAC would be, you know, genuinely engaged in wanting to participate both as speakers and or attending and listening. So, and the first event 2 years ago was about 50 people. They doubled to 100 last year. That they turned 100 away last year simply because the venue couldn't cope with it, because it was a free venue on UC Berkeley campus. So, you know, it feels like there's a really nice small event in there at a workshop kind of state. So I just would love us to keep the conversation going, and if we can help them get to an ask, that would be great.
Yeah, and I think they're interested in having more end user participation as opposed to it being more of a kind of an academic or industry, you know, vendor kind of event. So they're interested in broadening it.
And Don was quite honest. Like, they started this as a way to drum up interest in the Keystone Enclave project 2 years ago. The other discussion that I've had with Don and the Berkeley team was whether they start to bring Keystone to the consortium as a new project, and that they're still talking about that and thinking about it. So, but that's a separate discussion.
Yeah, but I mean, I think a lot of the topics in the last year one were not Keystone related. So.
Oh, absolutely right. I mean,
So,
Fortanix was a presenter. And my apology, I'm forgetting your engineer who's on the TAC.
Jethro.
Jethro, thank you. Jethro presented, and Intel presented, and I think it was Simon, wasn't it? Might have been. So I mean, we've got folks that are even on our technical advisory council that are presenters at this. So that's why it feels like there's good overlap.
So I guess there's no immediate action other than, you know, we want to make sure it's worth, you know, having them on to explore further and like giving you guys an opportunity to ask questions about it and discuss. I think, you know, they wanted to get input on whether we think they should, you know, do a virtual event this year or not. That was one of the discussion topics, because that would be a little more urgency in it than if they're canceling it this year or delaying it late into the fall or something like that. So I'd propose we put them on the agenda for next week, and then find out a little bit more and give everybody a chance to ask them questions about it. Does that make sense? Any concerns about that? Okay, we'll go forward with that. Let's move on to the vendor related content. And I'm going to pull up, Stephen, do you want to talk through the what you sent out, which was the GitHub newsfeed process? Stephen, you there?
Might be talking to mute.
Yeah, I think
You're talking to mute, I think.
I am definitely talking to mute. Thank you all for your patience and courtesy. That's twice in 2 days that I've made that mistake. If you could go straight to the, actually, yeah. So just, I sketched in what I thought might look like a process here. And like literally, I was making this up as I went. I threw a set of names down. It's not like I really thought that these were the names even. It was more just giving folks a sense of how we might think about a process here. And then if you go to the actual issues tab. And then I literally did a random search and pulled together a pile of content. And as I was walking my way through the content, was thinking, oh, this might be a useful label. Again, these are labels that I made up on the fly. There is no real experience to any of this. I was just trying to design something vaguely helpful as a straw man that we can kick around and get a sense of, is this a useful type of process? Honestly, I'm not tied to this in any way, shape, or form. To me, it's more just taking the step to present something to you folks to see what you do or don't like. And that was, I was deliberately broad in reaching out to kind of grab a whole pile of things. So everything from, you know, op-ed content to news articles to journal type things. Some of them were paywall. One of them was directly marked as sponsored on a news feed. So that's kind of where all of this came from. If you pull up just any of them randomly, maybe the one with 5 comments, trusted execution environment. So there was some confusion here. Now that's interesting. My apologies. So I sent out something yesterday where I thought I was helping people with instructions, and for whatever reason, you don't have the emoji button to push to give it a thumbs up.
Oh, I'm not signed in to GitHub or whatever, so that's why.
Oh, that would be the difference. Thank you. So we're along that first line where it says, you know, Stephen Wally commented 7 days ago and owner, there is typically an emoji button there. And that's where the thumbs up, thumbs down emojis are hiding. So yeah, my apologies. I didn't actually appreciate that you had to be signed in, but of course that makes sense. And so, you know, again, literally as a simple process without trying to go too far, I, you know, threw the actual title of the article or op-ed or whatever it was as the issue name, and then put the link in as the first comment, just as the simple way to
and so then we would emoji vote on the first comment.
Yep.
Okay, that's the part that was tripping me up. I was trying to vote on the title and I couldn't find a way to do that.
Totally get it.
Okay.
And so, and then, and there really is like there's a discussion that flows from that. If folks, you know, I was more trying to provide, again, working with tools that exist rather than creating something, just a simple format where folks can then debate and discuss. And yeah, I think it did raise, like, the 2 clearest areas that we have concerns about are paywall, not paywall, and sponsored, not sponsored. And again, in the discussion that Jesse started in his comments yesterday or the day before, and thanks for that, Jesse. You know, some of these might just be like, most of it might fall into a content of simple up-down voting. And, you know, once we have 3 yeses or 3 nos, we kind of have an easy, yeah, that belongs in the feed or not. But when we step in, there could be labels like sponsored and paywall where it does require a little more discussion, whatever that means for our process. Sorry, your process, since I'm not part of this.
I like the labels, that helps. And I do agree that this is evolving process and probably evolving criteria as well. I have to admit, I started kind of no paywall, but through the discussion found myself kind of morphing to yeah, I guess paywall's not so bad as long as we tell people and as long as all of our content isn't behind a paywall.
Yeah.
It's true. A good solid something or another from Gartner or IEEE or something like that, that could provide a lot of legitimacy and a lot of people would have access to it. So we'd be sort of silly to not reference it. So yeah, I kind of found myself switching on that one.
And that's something that, you know, the labels here, like, this is really just a curation process in its kind of really kind of simplistic state. if, you know, as things flow to the website, and I am not literate on content systems on websites. But, you know, I'm assuming that in WordPress for the feed that we could add labels of some kind. So even if we just, you know, mirrored some of the labels so that folks looking at the news feed could quickly see, oh, this is a paywall thing or not, or this is a journal thing or a technical thing versus news or op-ed or blog. You know, I think if there's a way for us in the news feed itself on the site, but and then just in the discussion based on Jesse's work, I think there's actually that higher level discussion. And this, again, I want to make it really clear. I was just mocking this together for you folks to actually, you know, to give you a center of gravity for the discussion. I am not an experienced content curator. I am not an experienced product marketing person who has, you know, enough to say here. So it's like me pretending to be a lawyer. You know, if you folks tell me, but it felt like we need that higher level discussion of what's the goal here,
Yeah, I
and
think,
kind of capturing that written down. What's the goals, and then what's the process?
I think it was exactly, and thank you, Stephen, for I think this process you put up in this exercise kind of showed that we maybe skipped over that discussion, and we don't all see the point of the ethos of this news, you know, menu the same way. Or so I think we should absolutely discuss. I think you started with two great points of, is it for user education or is it for industry validation?
And I think that's a great question. But you guys need to take that.
I will start with, I can start with my opinion. I think, you know, our consortium and our mission is, the primary focus is user education. And that if we are to have a news feed, I think it needs to be around, you know, not showing ecosystem movement, or excuse me, ecosystem movement, not showing, I say corporate investment movement. That is for them to do. That is, I think it puts us in an interesting situation if we start really trying to show corporate growth.
So I have I think I mostly agree, but the nuance maybe that I would add is I 100% agree that our purpose is education, but education isn't just to let me instruct you on the definition of things. It can also be, let me inform you about the options that you have. And so I don't think we should obviously get into vendor advocacy or vendor comparison kind of stuff, but many people are wondering, are basically saying, okay, I get the concept. Now, how do I get the actual thing, right? Where do I go for more? How do I get to an implementation level of details? And so I think having information about what is available is part of education.
I guess what I'm struggling to see is what sort of vendor written article we would be able to publish that would kind of have our lens of neutrality. Like, even if it, you know, no one is going to publish something that says my product is superior to this other product. It's just not something anyone should be doing. So, but even the slightest, you know, this is my use case. If the product marketer is doing their job, they possess.
And I think you cut out.
So I had a comment on the paywall process, which stems from what I posted into the chat room. If you go back to that original issue, for example, I did verify that the paywalled article, which was published at IEEE, the author of that article has his own site at a university or whatever, and has exactly the same paper. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there is a link to exactly the same paper at a non-paywalled source. What I've seen, now of course, this link may not be as stable, right? Because this is at somebody's personal site, and who knows if that one's gonna go away, or the other one is stable and permanent. So what I've seen, like Slashdot articles do, is reference the paywalled source, and then in parentheses, put the non-paywalled link as well, so they'd both be in there. But the point is that the article is available via non-paywalled sources, and I think this may be more common than you think, where published papers and stuff may appear on an author's site, at least for the ones that go through things like IEEE.
Yeah, it's a great point. And also paywall is different for each person because a lot of places offer a set of free articles. I think New York Times, you get 5 a month or something like that. So for a lot of the audience, it may be accessible, and for some who've maybe used it a lot, they may be reaching their limit. But we certainly, again, wouldn't want to artificially limit access to good information just because there's somebody who might not be able to read it.
Right. So the question that I have is, because it looks like there was resistance to including things that were behind a paywall. I see several comments about that from a couple of you anyway. And so the question is, do you have the same issue if there's both a paywalled and a non-paywalled link to the same article, so that you know that it's actually public? Is that okay? Because that's the approach that Slashdot takes, is my understanding.
Yeah, I would think from my side, I think that would be okay. And if it's paywalled and we think the content is actually a good value article, just to flag it as such when it's published. And I think that's okay.
I mean, from a validation perspective, as we educate the marketplace, if we had a Wall Street Journal article or an Economist article talking about confidential computing, I think that would be really good.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying there's 3 different categories. There's things that are not paywalled, there's things that are paywalled only, like Wall Street Journal, and there's things that the stable version is paywalled, but there's also a non-paywalled copy of it. And this one's in that second category. And are all 3 okay, or do people want to shy away from the ones like Wall Street Journal that are paywalled, or what? It sounds like I haven't seen whether there's actually any consensus on the Wall Street Journal example, but on this one, I think this one is clearer. That my opinion as just an outside observer is, I think it would be good to include things that are publicly available, even if they are
honestly, I think that goes without saying, Dave. I think that's a no-brainer. In fact, by definition, if you're including things that are not paywalled, then if you have an article that's not paywalled, it's included. So I think we can eliminate that middle category as even worth discussing. And I also feel that somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but even from Philippe's comments, it sounds like we're at least circling towards a willingness to include paywall as long as we identify it as such and we don't overly abuse it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's, I would be fine including paywall stuff, but it's just a little bit of a balance on the quality of the source and the article. So like if you have a kind of gray area source and article, then the paywalls might be a reason to not have it over the line. But if it's a really good source and like a Wall Street Journal or a IEEE or Gartner or something, then
it's funny because it's almost like an informal points system, right? If you have enough, if it's compelling enough, then that sort of overwhelms the maybe the demerit that comes with a paywall. And I feel the same way about vendor stuff, and I'm fine with something that says maybe not paid articles or something like that. But to me, there are articles that mention a vendor solution in an article that has a lot of value, talking about the overall market. And then there are articles that include basically just a description of a vendor solution with very little broader confidential computing value. I don't think those two should be viewed the same. You know what I mean? There should be some ability to look at it and just say, oh, just because there's a brand name in there doesn't instantly disqualify it. It's a question of whether it's adding to the overall discourse. A good example of that was the Red Hat one. right? That, I guess, technically was not a paid article, but it was a personal blog. So certainly not an independent third party. And certainly did mention a specific vendor solution. In fact, it was about a vendor solution, but it was written in a way that wasn't making a bunch of comparisons or favorites and was talking about what's possible in that area. And I thought that was a good article, right? I thought that was something that our educating public would want to know more about.
Folks, just Anne seems to be having internet difficulties. She's got a comment in the chat that she apologizing that her internet cut out, but
Yeah, sounds like she's raising the issue of whether we only do member vendor related articles or it's broader, which my take would be, you know, it's more based on the merit of the article than whether it's a member.
well, and to somebody's earlier comment, you know, I think it becomes a points system discussion. There are two clear categories, you know, this kind of sense of either vendor content. I mean, my as I said in yesterday's email, I'm happy to be educated, but when a news channel marks something as sponsored, that typically says ad to me, and I'm uncomfortable with it. In fact, I typically stop reading at that moment. But you know, I'm happy for you folks to educate me. But if we have these two categories of things, one being paywall and one being you know, sponsored content or vendor content, and I think we need a little more nuance in how we label those things, that it might just require more discussion before it hits the news feed.
Yeah, I think the vendor, so in terms of, I think the standard that is kind of what we're talking about is similar to what an unpaid contributed article would be, where you're not allowed to mention your product. You know, I mean, there's the Red Hat example you gave, Jesse, wouldn't meet the definition of a contributed article, but I think if you have a sponsored article, that's where you've paid and you have editorial control, versus if it's a contributed article that, you know, a publication takes as a piece, that's a, you know,
Well,
there's a filter on the neutrality of that, right? And the
yeah,
editors of that.
I agree, but there's absolutely no difference between a sponsored article and a blog, right?
Correct. No, I agree with that.
They both, the author has the editorial control. So saying blogs are okay and sponsored articles are not, just as a matter of policy, doesn't actually make any sense at all.
No, yeah, and I wasn't suggesting that. I'm just saying that there's kind of some different areas there on the spectrum.
Right. My point is, what's important about identifying something as a sponsored article is so that it doesn't incorrectly have the viewpoint of neutrality, right? Yeah. If it's coming from an independent site, that could give the impression that it's an independent article, and you need to identify that it's sponsored so you know, no, this is actually more like a blog. But I don't think either of those makes it on its face inappropriate for this. There are blogs that have lots of useful educational material in them, and I think it could be that a sponsored article, we've done sponsored articles where we've not actually gone into our stuff at all. We've done a sponsored article just about confidential computing without talking about anything related to our particular offerings. So I don't think a sponsored article has to be off limits. I just think it goes back to, what is the content? Is it serving the purpose of educating about confidential computing and the broad industry, or is it serving the purpose of an advertisement for a specific product versus others?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with not, myself, my opinion would be, you know, not ruling out entire categories of things and then providing some guidelines on what should not be in the content, and, you know, what the objectives for content is that we're going to post on the site.
So I have a couple of questions, and I just noticed the time, and we've kind of chewed more time on this than I thought we were going to. I'd like to know from Stefano if the WordPress tooling that we might use for a news feed could support labels so that we could clearly pass through, you know, kind of identified labels to a reader in a news feed.
I believe so. I know that the posts have categories, and I am sure since they have a way of attaching a category, there's a way to attach more than
So
one.
if we could confirm that, please, because categories might be you dropped it into one bucket and only one bucket, whereas
Right.
tags
Sure.
and labels are more fluid.
Hey, Stephen, I'm pretty sure from walking through with Stefano that it does support that, because it supports things like a word cloud and things of that nature. The question might be a little bit of timing. In other words, I'll let Stefano tell me, but this might go beyond Stefano's comfort level of implementation. So this might be where we need the engagement to have the website being supported by somebody with more skills.
Perfect. Thank you, both of you.
I've taken an action item too to look into that.
But then the other thing I think comes back to, and if you push it back to me, I'm happy to keep trying here. What do you want as the next step? It feels like folks have kind of coalesced that this isn't a horrible process, but we need a points system so that folks can actually have a real discussion. And
I mean, I think the three thumbs, like a voting system is fine without having a point system. You just factor the article's merit into whether you vote thumbs up or thumbs down. I mean,
yeah, so it sounds like the decision-making process is a voting process. We have sort of a set of, I'm going to call them factors rather than criteria, right? So rather than just saying flat out, all of these things are off limits no matter what we're essentially, we're in limits. We're saying, let's think about the following. Let's think about access. Let's think about vendor preference. Let's think about who's the source. Let's think about educational quality, all of those things. And those are going to influence how we vote.
I think it would be good to write in what I'm showing here, what the objectives and attributes of content we want on the site are, just to document that. So you just mentioned 5 different vectors of things, right?
I'm happy to recreate this under the consortium site.
I think that would be good, and then we should just agree on some language around the things that we want in the content, and then start applying it. Would be my suggestion.
Can I ask, who is allowed to vote on this? Is this open to all members, or is this also open to non-members?
I think this is an outreach committee thing. And if you want to identify a narrower group of what I called them lead curators, I didn't really give them any responsibility beyond saying that, I would argue that a lead curator is the one who basically either cuts off debate or says they've got enough votes to either chuck something or throw it into the news feed. But I don't think this is a completely open system. I think I would worry that if we made it completely open, nothing really happens in a clean way. I'd rather that the outreach committee, some number of the outreach committee feels a certain responsibility for curating the content.
Maybe include someone from the TAC as well, like Dave.
And actually, you're right. I think that's a great suggestion, Philippe, that there just needs to be a curation committee. I think they should be members. I'm assuming that they would have to be active members because that's the only way they're going to know we're doing this.
Yeah, and I think let's make it an odd number so there aren't any ties.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. So let me take a stab at moving this over into our world and putting a little more of what we've discussed today into this kind of header.
We may not want to do it, like you mentioned the odd number, we may not want to do it where the entire committee has to vote on each article before
Yep.
it's approved. We may want more of like a threshold vote, right?
Yep.
At least X number of up votes or X number of down votes.
I'll
Rules the
play with
day.
it, and you folks can come back and tell me next week whether you think I'm closer to the mark.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Website. Ben, I have the kind of sitemap kind of page up. How do you want to do this?
Do you want to pull up the live site?
Sure.
There's also at least 10 issues filed on the GitHub against the website right now. I put the link in the chat room if anybody wants to look at the list of issues.
I'll do it when I get power.
Oh, we need an extra W here. Or no W's. Okay, I have the live site up.
Okay, so I'll let Stefano be my wingman, but basically me and Stefano last Friday basically sat down virtually and started implementing or rearranging the pages that we already had content for, and moved things around, which included on the home page pulling the FAQ out as a separate page, and pulling the Join Us page into the, that was a different one. The Join Us page we left separately because it looked like it was going to cloud the member page too much. I think that's what we did.
It looks like it's under the about right now.
Yeah, we kept it a separate page. Instead of a sub page, we kept it as a page underneath, which
Okay.
we saw several other Linux Foundation organizations following as a method. And trying to think what else. So pretty much what we really have is we have a really weak learn section, and the other and then we have to fill in the project pages. So I need to get a template out to the projects to get that in. We just temporarily put in we pulled the project page. We had a list of the projects, so that's the project page, and then we're going to have an individual page for each project, and that's what I need to populate. And then in that spreadsheet, in the Google Slides that you were displaying a minute ago, that had the list of pages, including the project pages, that we need to create content for, so we can have populated pages. And as we create those, then we can start put them into the website, which is pretty light work for Stefano to do, and I'm happy to sit down with him and work on it. So my plan is, if somebody has passion on any of those pages, if you can switch over to the Google Slides stuff.
Yeah, I'm showing it.
If anybody has any passion for any of the pages in the Learn section, or any of those pages listed, great, let me know, or to start filling it in. Otherwise, my plan is to start drafting them and then send out a link when we have some drafts so people can go in and provide any of their comments or edits as they see fit. So I think this is maybe simpler than you thought, Seth. And then if anybody has any questions or has any second thoughts on additional pages or changes to the structure, we can talk about it now or next time.
Just on the process that you want to use for getting reviews of proposed pages, what's the mechanism that you're going to use to send it out and get reviews on them?
So unless somebody wants to take the lead on any page.
Or a Markdown in GitHub? Or...
Oh, it's a Google Doc. We have a Google Doc right now.
Okay.
So basically, I'll send it. I was going to send it out to the outreach committee. Was that Mark or Jesse?
This was Dave.
Dave.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I couldn't remember. Yeah. So my intention was to send it out to the outreach committee to get that information populated. If you wanted to be included, Dave, that's fine.
I'm
I
just
figured
trying to
since we're kind
compare
of
it to
doing,
what, so in the TAC, there was a question about what process that we want to use for website changes. And Stefano had created a GitHub repo that's the one that has a bunch of the issues filed in it. And so that's what I put the link in the chat room about. And so I'm trying to correlate it with what process the TAC is using for generating changes to the website versus what process the outreach is going to use for doing changes to the website and how we coordinate between us.
When you're saying the website, Dave, we're talking about the same website, not the GitHub repo.
Confidentialcomputing.io is the website, right? And so there's a GitHub repo that contains nothing other than a set of GitHub issues, right? That's the
Yeah, but I guess where I'm getting a little confused is I thought the TAC was leveraging the GitHub. I thought the outreach committee was responsible for the website.
In the discussions that we've been in before, maybe it hasn't been clear, but there's some content on the website for which the TAC believes it is authoritative. So for example, there was facts about projects. Now, maybe the question is the TAC is not authoritative and you want the outreach to be authoritative for all the project content.
Well, I mean, that was what we had said, right? Is that we would provide a template to the TAC to complete the project pages.
So
yeah, I don't think that information has not been communicated to the TAC. I mean, I was on the call where you said it here, but I don't think that's been communicated to the TAC. So
okay.
Yeah,
I can put that on the list of things for outreach to report out on tomorrow, even if it's just me doing the reporting. But I think, Ann, you said you were going to be there too. So
yeah, I think we were going to have like a landing page for each project that was fairly static, and then it would go to a, the project's own web page, so which would be controlled by the projects.
Yeah, my point was the projects would control their detailed content. We would have a landing page that would have a basic set of information, which we're asking the TAC to contribute that basic set of information to. But I think it would be cumbersome to have two separate committees with two separate editing processes, basically making changes to the same pages.
yeah, that's exactly why I bring it, because I don't want that either, right?
Yeah, and I think
since there's also a number of issues that are filed that are probably not TAC issues, they're more outreach issues, then I want to make sure that we can actually close the GitHub issue as you're making the website changes.
we will be going through the GitHub issues. That's true. I just want to make one clarification, and it's a kind of a clarification question. So in a prior outreach meeting, we decided what we were going to do is use the outreach members of the project to coordinate what should be populated for that project templated page, not a TAC. So we're going to go to the project and find their outreach person and have them fill it out.
So that part I have a problem with, because I don't think projects have an official member.
I agree.
Otherwise, right?
I agree with that.
In the CCC structure that Stephen always shows, right? The structure is that the TAC is the coordination committee between projects and the rest of the CCC.
Yeah, there's a submitter of a project, I guess I would agree, or an originator, whatever you want to call it, but the project is owned by the TAC, not by an individual company.
Yep. So I guess Stephen may correct me, but my understanding is that communication between the projects and the CCC in general goes through the TAC. Now, you let me know if that's not correct, but that's my understanding of my responsibility.
All right, so my question, because I kind of disagree with that the way it should be, but so let me just pose it out, because maybe this needs to be coordinated between the two things, Seth, the two committees. So if we wanted to do any communication that relates to any project, then we have to communicate it to a TAC, so the TAC can communicate it to a project, so that they can communicate back to the TAC, so the TAC can communicate to the outreach committee.
Well, thanks for being so facetious. I don't think anybody has suggested that.
Okay.
What we're saying is a project is not owned by a company. Red Hat doesn't just go and say, I'm going to put whatever I want on the NARCS page because it's mine.
Correct.
Okay. So that's all that's been said, right? Nobody has created a 10-step back and forth process. Nobody even proposed that. What we're saying is that the TAC has the project, you know, let's just say the supervision of the project definitions, and so we're asking them to please provide us that. I see that as one step.
Yeah,
Hey,
I've
hey guys,
also-
I have to drop, which means you're going to lose the
Okay.
video. I propose we just continue this discussion because it's obviously needs some more discussion
Okay.
next week.
By the way, I
Yeah.
agree with what Ben said, by the way. I lost audio for about 30 seconds, but what
That's
I
okay.
thought-
We didn't come to any conclusions. We don't have enough time to fully discuss it, so we're going to talk about it next week.
Hey Seth, I also
Okay.
wanted to mention I won't be able to attend for 2 weeks. Next week I can, but the following 2 weeks I won't be able to. So I wanted
Okay.
to name Michael Liu as alternate for me on the arms side.
Okay, great. Thank you, Philippe.
That's good. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye all.
Bye.